Have you ever experienced something so terrifying it haunts your dreams even years later? Our tale begins on a night like no other, with our protagonist, a young and diligent nurse named Emily. Fresh out of nursing school, Emily was eager to make a difference, to breathe life into the sterile white halls of the hospital. She was given the night shift, a time when the hospital took on a different character, where the stillness was only broken by the occasional beep of a heart monitor or the distant echo of a doctor's footsteps. This was St. Mary's Hospital, a seemingly ordinary establishment. But beneath its regular facade was an eerie history that had been whispered about in hushed voices among the staff. There were tales of unexplained incidents of patients who reported seeing spectral figures in the dead of night, of strange sounds that had no source, and of a pervasive feeling of unease that clung to the walls like a stubborn shadow. Emily, though, was a rational soul. She brushed off these chilling anecdotes as mere figments of overactive imaginations, fueled by the stress of the job and the late-night hours. But she would soon learn that there are things in this world that go beyond the realm of reason. As her shift began, she felt an odd chill crawl up her spine, a sense of dread that she couldn't quite shake off. The hospital was unusually quiet that night, the silence so profound that it seemed to swallow up even the faintest sounds. Emily shrugged it off, attributing it to her nerves playing tricks on her, but the unease lingered, casting a long, ominous shadow over her thoughts. As the clock in the nurse's station chimed, marking the arrival of midnight, Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. It was as though the hospital itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. Despite her rational mind dismissing it as fatigue, deep down Emily knew this was not going to be an ordinary night. An uncanny chill filled the air, a silence so profound it was almost deafening. In the heart of the hospital, a sense of unease starts to creep up on our diligent nurse. The once familiar, comforting corridors now seem like an intricate maze, dimly lit and shrouded in a sinister mystery. Each step she takes echoes ominously, her heartbeat syncing with the rhythm, amplifying her growing fear. Whispers too soft to decipher seem to float in the wind as if the very walls are murmuring secrets of times long past. The shadows too seem to have a life of their own, shifting and morphing at the edge of her vision, making her second-guess her own senses. And then the peculiarities begin. The lights, once a beacon of solace in the gloom, start flickering, casting eerie patterns on the cold linoleum floor. The rhythmic hum of the hospital machinery turns into an irregular staccato, as if the hospital itself is gasping for breath. Objects start to vanish without a trace. A chart here, a syringe there, and then a whole tray of medical instruments. No corner is spared from the unseen predator, leaving behind a wake of confusion and dread. The hospital, once bustling with life, now resonates with noises that have no place in the realm of the living. The clatter of a wheelchair in an empty room, the echo of footsteps in deserted hallways, and the distant sound of a child's laughter when no child should be present. The air grows colder, the whispers louder, and the shadows bolder. The nurse, once a pillar of strength, now feels like a helpless pawn in a chilling game she doesn't understand. She tries to brush it off, to rationalize the irrational, but the uncanny occurrences make it impossible to ignore the unseen presence. And then, out of nowhere, a blood-curdling scream echoed through the empty halls. Imagine the terror of being alone in a haunted hospital. Your only companion, the unseen specter that lurks in the shadows. The echoes of the scream still lingered in the chilly corridors. A shudder ran down the spine of the lone nurse as she ventured into the depths of the hospital. She was drawn, almost against her will, to a room that had been locked for years. The room where a patient had died under strange, unexplained circumstances. The room that was now pulsating with a malevolent energy that was impossible to ignore. She hesitated at the threshold, her heart pounding in her chest. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob, the cold metal biting into her palm. The door creaked open, revealing a room untouched by time. The air was heavy, charged with a lingering sense of dread. The room was empty, but it felt as though it was crowded with unseen entities. In the corner, a rocking chair began to creak, moving back and forth of its own accord. The nurse's breath hitched, her eyes wide with fear. She could hear whispers, soft and sinister, murmuring words she couldn't quite catch. The temperature dropped, her breath fogging up in the icy air. A sudden movement caught her eye. A shadow, darker than the rest, flitted across the room. She could feel eyes on her, watching, waiting. The sense of dread grew, a pit in her stomach that refused to go away. She could feel the hair on the back of her neck stand up, a primal instinct warning her of the danger she was in. But she couldn't move. She was stuck, frozen in fear, her heart pounding in her chest so hard it was all she could hear. She tried to call for help, but her voice was a mere whisper, lost in the chilling silence of the room. And then, as if the unseen specter had decided to make its presence known, the room plunged into darkness. Her scream echoed through the hospital, a chilling reminder of the haunting that had just begun. As she stood there, frozen in fear, the room suddenly plunged into darkness. What would you do if you found yourself locked in a room with an invisible entity, your screams echoing in the void? Imagine being the nurse in question, your heart pounding in your chest like a jackhammer. Every breath you draw in shallow and quick, as if the very air around you is laced with fear. You pull and push at the door, your hands shaking, but it's as if some unseen force is holding it shut. It's not just a door, it has become a barrier, a cruel joke separating you from the safety of the outside world. The lights begin to flicker, the sterile white walls pulsating with an eerie glow. You can feel it, the cold shiver of something unknown crawling up your spine. The room, once so familiar, is now a prison, a cage of terror. You scream, your voice piercing the silence, but there is no one to hear you, no one to come to your aid. With every passing second, the paranormal activities intensify. Objects begin to levitate, the air grows colder, and an invisible weight presses against your chest, making it harder to breathe. You're trapped in a nightmare that seems to have no end. But then, in a final desperate attempt, you gather every ounce of your courage and hurl yourself against the door. It bursts open, and you stumble out into the hospital corridor. The lights are bright, the air warm, and there's a peaceful silence that's almost deafening after the chaos you've just escaped from. You take a moment, leaning against the wall, your heart still racing, but relief washing over you. It's over, or so you think. But as you straighten up to leave, something catches your eye, something that sends a fresh wave of dread coursing through your veins. The name on the room's door was your own, and with that realization, the blood in your veins turns to ice, and the unresolved mystery takes on a whole new, terrifying dimension.